Greetings. My name is Dr. Tori Butler, and this is Hollering for Change. And I am so excited and elated to have the Reverend Dr. Aleze Fulbright with us on today. She has been recently elected as the General Secretary of the General Conference. I am so happy to have you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's always a joy to connect with you.
Well, it's always a joy to be with you as well. We were together during the July meeting of the National Black Clergy Women of the United Methodist Church. And one of the things that happened there that I thought was pretty exciting and amazing was that the National Black Clergy Women honored you and and Bishop Tracy Smith Malone with a second line. And if you don't know what a second line is, it's basically a big party, a big parade just to celebrate accomplishments. So how did it feel to see a sea of Black women singing and dancing and clapping and inviting you into a space of joy and celebrating you and Bishop Malone and for what God has been doing? How did it make you feel to be in that space?
Oh my word, humbling because I was there for Bishop Malone's celebration. I'm there all day long and I had my phone capturing the moment, taking pictures for her if she needed that. And then one of the persons, Reverend Tiffany Postel, came up to me, grabbed my phone, and she was like, "We're celebrating you." I'm like, "Me?" Like, um, and then it was just humbling just to be among the great cloud of those within our community that expand across many contexts, um, to be celebrated in that way. Like, I think some of the things that we miss in life is that point of celebration. We do great in accomplishment, but we don't take time to celebrate. And so for me to experience it was another reminder of how that needs to be integrated into my everyday living and being. Yeah.
So do you believe that you deserve the celebration?
Oh, absolutely not.
Oh,
So, the things that I've shared is, for me, I am achiever by nature. Have always been that from infancy up until now. So the things that I achieve are just things that I check off the list and keep it moving. And so for those to be intentionally celebrate me for the it just it's humbling, and I'm just still trying to wrestle with it because I'm like, it's just me. I'm just doing a job. Like I'm just living out my call like everyone else. Like that what makes me yeah. So it's quite humbling. It really is.
so for another Black woman who happens to be kind of living into what Shaniqua Walker Barnes calls like the strong Black woman. She's an atlas who wears the weight of multiple worlds upon her shoulders. And oftentimes as Black women, we get used to just achieving, and not pausing. Now, after you've now had this moment of celebration, what would you say to another Black woman who has achieved and hasn't paused? What would you tell them about not just your experience, but the necessity to pause?
Mhm. And I think it's the intentionality to pause and to celebrate, to pause, reflect, and celebrate. And so, to that person, you may not have a second line, but you can do your own second line. You to really have intentional time of pausing, reflecting, and celebrating self, not in a way that is narcissistic in that vein. Absolutely not, but to know that all that one had to go through, overcome in order and sacrifice in order to get to this point of achievement does not come without the reflection, the growth, but then also the pat on the back to say, sis, you made it. You made it, whatever it is. And it may not be the pinnacle of what you feel you need to be, but it's a step further from where you were.
Mm. So, in your journey, you have served in the local church. You have served as director of leadership for North Texas, as well as the Indiana Conference. You have been a district superintendent. You've done all of these things. And so, when you think about this trajectory of now being the first, not just You've been, I'm going to assume you're probably were the first Black woman in many of these positions. And now you are, for what I believe is the first woman of color to serve as the General Secretary of the General Conference. How does it make you feel to be a first? And how has that, what were some challenges? What were some joys about being a first, or did you even think about that you were the first? And what were some challenges that may have come as a part of being a first?
To lean into this new responsibility and to not know through, I didn't know until stated, the first BIPOC person to serve in this capacity. I'm like, holy cow, what?
Mm.
I didn't even know that was a thing. And so again, that brings about this humility and excitement. Excitement because it plants seeds of possibilities for others that simply, as Vice President Kamala Harris says, just because I'm the first won't make me the last. And it presents the door to open wider for greater opportunities for all types of persons to serve in the varying capacities within our church and church leadership. So it just gives people a tangible witness that anything and all things are possible.
So, what would you say to that young African American female clergy person who is starting in their first appointment? One of the things that I've found out about you is that you took a $40,000 cut to go into full-time ministry. And so, what would you tell that person as you are a person that has positioned yourself for possibilities and maybe they can't see the possibilities yet? What advice would you give them in that very, very first appointment, not necessarily knowing where God is leading, and yet there is a call there?
Yeah. I think back to myself almost 18 years ago when I started in my first full-time appointment. It wasn't what was next, it was being faithful to what was. And so the ways in which I was faithful in the appointment that was provided. I was associate pastor at First Commerce as well as campus minister on the campus of A&M Commerce. And so I was just diligent in the faithfulness of the present. And so I wasn't even looking beyond that. It was like, okay, I'm faithful in this. And then when being invited to serve on committees, I showed up and I was present and my voice was heard and I contributed to the solutions. That's important, showing up, your voice being heard and contributing to the solutions. And I feel that when you're faithful and then you're showing up, contributing to solutions, it gains the awareness of others who have positions of power and influence that creates doors of possibilities for people. And I feel that that is how, and of course, the working of God and God's Spirit, to usher me into the various roles and responsibilities that I have been afforded to serve and lead. But that showing up, being faithful to what is in front of you and showing up and contributing to the solution is key and essential. I think that in my conversations with some, it's okay, so I'm gonna do this, and you have this orchestrated timeline, which is unfortunate because you set yourself up for disappointment when it doesn't fit within the timeline that you have prescribed.
Wow.
So what would it be to focus on what you're doing right now, being faithful to that task, and then when being invited to other or even offering yourself for availability to serve in other capacities, and then doing that faithfully, without overextending yourself, without burning yourself out, trying to be seen. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Can you talk about a season where you might have overextended yourself and how did you course correct?
Honestly, there has not been a season because I have a strong community of care that keeps me in check. So
Mm.
between my covenant group, my therapist, and my coach, they keep me in check. And I have touch points with them regularly to where if there is this appearance of I'm overextending or I'm feeling overwhelmed, between those three touch points, oh, and then my son, who, he don't care what my title is, I'm mama to him, period.
Yeah, yeah.
um, it's that community of care that keeps me in check so that I'm not overextending myself. There will be the ebbs and flows of things that things converge all at the same time, and then it's a matter of pacing and scheduling. But honest to goodness, there's never been a season to where I've overextended because I have those people, truth tellers in my life to say, no is what you're saying to this. And no is a complete sentence.
Amen. Amen. Can you talk a little bit about developing a community of care? Because oftentimes, as clergy women, we find ourselves in these seasons of isolation, in these seasons of trying to figure it out, particularly if you are new to being a pastor. You know, there are friends and family members that fall away, and you're trying to kind of figure out, okay, how do I transition into being this full-time, uh, woman or man of the cloth, while trying to maintain relationships. And so, if you could just speak a little bit to this community of care, because I think that's really an important thing that oftentimes gets overlooked, because going again, oftentimes we're running, and we're just doing the work. Praise God for folk that are doing the work, but not looking outwardly, not paying attention to the relationships. That's why, folk end up getting divorced and all that, because they're finding themselves even more self-isolated because the community of care doesn't exist or it hasn't been cultivated. So can you talk a little bit about cultivating the community of care?
Mm-hmm. So priority for me after graduating seminary, and I heard it from many people, is find yourself a good therapist. So that has been key and essential, and that has been life-giving and life-saving throughout this course of ministry. So being able to identify a therapist that you are able to have consistent and regular touch points with is the foundation, for me, has been the foundation of my community of care. Being able to have a coach. So part of my continuing education funds, that is part of the yearly charge conference paperwork, is that I ask for the investment of a coach. Me getting coaching only helps the system get better. It enhances me and my skills, gifts, and abilities, but it only enhances the system. So that's why I ask for that investment. So being able to identify and find a coach, and there are a plethora of coaches, those that are certified coaches, not calling themselves coaches, that follow ethics and practices that are key and essential is important. And so I have engaged in a coaching relationship throughout my course of ministry, which has been helpful for me. They have been able to unleash the answers that are within me, but to be able to have that space, that brave space to have the conversations about some things has been very essential. And then being able to have a covenant group. The covenant group that I currently have, we have an affinity and we join together based on affinity because of our roles and responsibility. And it has evolved into something more meaningful and in depth. And so initially, it may feel awkward.
Mm.
However, if this is something that you desire, you can either seek it out. Hey, would you consider um, joining me and two other people on a book study? And starting it at a book study, then you get a vibe and a synergy with one another to see, one, if they're trustworthy, two, if you want to do life with them. And
Yeah.
then from there, the book study could turn, hey, would you consider doing a retreat together? And let's see how we could spend time together. And I feel that when you have these particular opportunities to gather, be it virtually or in person, you get to sense if there is some commonality and camaraderie that would lend to a life-giving connection. And then it grows from there. But the beauty of both the community of care that I reference is you get to be the agent in it. It's not that it's coming to you. No, you seek it out. You ask for the investment. You make sure that you have a therapist. You seek out persons of affinity that you want to potentially do life and ministry with. And so it's not, well, they don't, no. It's not the they, it's you. So what are you intending to do for your own health and wellness?
Ooh, you gave us a lot there. Can you talk a little bit just about intentionality? Because you kind of hit on it, just to say, hey, it's our responsibility to take care of our own agency. But can you speak a little bit to about just being intentional? Because again, like many people look at their schedule and like, I don't have enough time to do this. I don't have enough time to do that. And there's this lack of intentionality, which also creates lack of boundaries.
Right. So similar to before we got on, and I was sharing with you a statement that I share with people all the time. We are agents in our own liberation. And so oftentimes, yes, the systems can be oppressive. Yes, the calendar can be limited. However, we have control over segments of our time that we get to dictate what goes there. If you choose to use and squander that segment of time just by scrolling mindlessly, God bless you. However,
God bless you, but however, okay.
however,
However,
there are other opportunities that could fit in there. You could have scheduled a counseling session. You could have engaged in a coaching relationship. You could have reached out to. And so it's being mindful of what your outcomes are that you have determined. And it's not contingent on someone else, it's based on you being intentional about it. And so, again, how you use your time is how you determine where you're going. It just is. Now, mind you, there are some times where you just need to mindlessly scroll, and I get that because life be life, and you just like, let me identify with somebody else's crazy right now because I can't deal with mine. But if that is your consistent practice, then I feel that there's a squandering of time.
mm, mm. I heard an old preacher say, time is spelled Life. And he just
That.
kind of, yeah, he just kind of said, we don't waste your time, don't waste your life away. For those who are interested in finding a therapist, I always like to give how to do that. So you can go on the Psychology Today website and it says find a doctor. And in that, you can search via your insurance. You can search via if you want a male or female. You can also do a search in terms of if you want to do in person or online. I also want to encourage you to check the back of your insurance cards because you can call the numbers on the back of the insurance cards as well as going on your insurance website and find a doctor via that. And oftentimes on the insurance website, you can read reviews. And so that way you can kind of vet out if this person is going to be a good fit for you. I also want to remind people that WestPath, if you are in a crisis, WestPath has a 24-hour line that you can call. If you just need to get some things off your chest, you're in the middle of a trauma or dramatic moment, there are options for you. As well as if you are looking for a coach, typically you can contact your leadership development office or your clergy excellence office at your conference level. And if you're still a little bit unsure, send your DS an email and they should be able to refer you to some resources that way. So I
May
want
I
to
also
talk,
offer a
yeah, go
component?
for it. Yeah, please.
Also, with our General Board of Higher Education and Ministry, they have created a catalog of coaches that have been vetted, and even some annual conferences have vetted coaches to be able to reach out to from the coaching aspect. And then the value of 988. 988 is becoming more and more public and needs to be utilized more and more. It's a free resource, often associated with suicide prevention. And it also has those resources for counselors, therapists, and other types for people to gain insight. So if they may not have the same economic means, be it access to insurance and those types of things, there are free resources that does not become a prohibitor for people to gain this type of thing that I'm talking about too. So,
Amen. You never know what you find out on the webinar, y'all. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. I want to go back to community of care for just a second. So I have encountered you in different settings as far as the National Black Clergy Women's Meeting, as well as the Convocation of Black Pastors. I've seen you in just different spaces that create camaraderie. But I specifically want to ask about the National Meeting for Black Clergy Women. How has that been a part of your community of care? How has that helped shape you to to provide the care and community that you provide, not just within your covenant group, but also within your positions of leadership.
Mm-hmm. So I got first introduced to the National Black Clergy Women of the United Methodist Church in 2006, where I was in seminary, and they invited me to be an intern. So they provided a stipend for me to attend the first, I didn't even know it was a thing. And I was like, oh, wow, how cool is that? And then to be there amongst a sea of us, to really to be in that brave space where it was both spiritual and informative. That was wonderful to see those sages in leadership being able to extend that leadership and see and witness leadership at a different level that had not been my norm in my context of annual conference service. And so that was in 2006. So I took from that experience like, okay, I want to be a part of this. I want to be a part of this. And then in 2013, when the national gathering was in Dallas, I was invited to be to come alongside to be a to assist assist a facilitator of a small group, a breakout session, which at that time was Reverend Dr. Tracy Smith Malone, who is now Bishop. And just to know in 2013 that I was serving alongside her and she was teaching about adaptive leadership, I'll never forget. I still have a PowerPoint.
Oh, wow.
And I was just amazed how she captivated the audience, how she taught with such command and expertise. So yes, the content was great, but I was paying attention to all of the things related to leadership. And I was like, oh, wow. And I did not even understand or even know the path. I was just enamored by her as person in that moment. And so from that experience, I gained, okay, so to be a confident leader, I need to do and integrate these things into my leadership. And then since then, it's been being a part of the national gathering when it convened, just to gain more and more insights, gain more and more connections with people, being able to see and witness the vastness of who we are within the United Methodist Church and the ways we lead and serve, even those that may not have leadership titles and positions, but yet there is still faithfulness and service that we can all learn from, that I have learned from directly. So I appreciate it, and it's part of who I am.
Did you receive mentorship through this gathering?
Mhm. So Reverend Dr. Weta Lee was the one in 2006 who offered my name at that time. And then 2013, when she was president and was hosting the national gathering in Dallas, offered me to serve as an assistant to a facilitator. So it has been those along the path that have mentored in a way to ensure that my name is shared in places that I would not have ordinarily had the opportunity to be a part. And also being able to say, you need to pay attention to this. I think of Reverend Dr. Sharon C. Patterson, who serves in the North Texas Conference, who has been a staple on stage within National Black Clergy Women, who is now retired. She was integral in that, and Dr. Lucretia Faison. So it's those persons who have been conversation spiritual partners with me along this journey. So when people see me now, it's not just me. There's a whole host of persons who have spoken life to me, have prayed me through some challenges, and continue to be cheerleaders and champions for me. So it's not me. You see a whole host of others.
Yeah. It's the village that has
Absolutely.
been with you the whole time. So can
Mhm.
again, I feel like this is super important just to talk about the importance of mentorship. And so how would you talk about the importance of getting a mentee and also peer mentors? Because I think sometimes we think that everyone that mentors us has to be so far ahead of us, where there are opportunities for us to mentor one another as we're, journeying this road together. So can you speak a little bit to the importance of finding a mentee and pouring into the next generation, as well as the importance of the camaraderie that women need in doing peer mentorship?
Mhm. I think for me, every mentoring relationship that I have had the opportunity to be a part of, a few of them is because I activated the intentionality. I asked the question, would you consider mentoring me? It's that simple question. And the honor of people like, oh my God, you asked me? Yes, because I see that you are doing great things, and not that I'm trying to be you. I just want to glean from you. That's it. And the honor that people would want to invest their time, skills, and abilities into me simply because I asked. And some of these were cold calls, like cold emails or sliding in the DMs, like, would you mentor me?
He's sliding in the DMs for
You
me.
may not know who I am, but let me introduce myself, and would you mentor me? And I'm not asking for a whole lot of time. And when we meet, I'm having an agenda, and I'm being very a good steward of the time that you're investing in me. So again, it takes the preparation, it takes the intentionality. So I'm not wasting their time nor mine. And then showing up. So for those who are seeking mentors, don't be afraid to ask. You'll be pleasantly surprised how many yeses you will get versus no, simply because you asked. And the humbleness that people experience when being invited into a mentoring relationship. For those that I have the opportunity to mentor, it comes back to don't waste my time.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
that I'm doing you a favor. However, this is something that you have initiated, not me. And
Yeah.
I can't want this more than you.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's a super important lesson. Also for mentors. Because oftentimes we want to pour into people because we see the potential, we see the anointing, we see the possibilities, and yet they're not ready, or they're not ready to be faithful in the commitment that's required to go to the next level. And I think there's something to be said about preparation. Because if you're a mentor and you spend time doing the training, we're doing the training with you because we want you to be prepared. And
That
so
is
there's a
true.
level of preparation you need to have when you come and talk to us. So I'm in 100% agreement.
Mhm. The mentors that I have now, we only meet 4 times a year.
Okay.
And we schedule and calendar so that I'm secured on their calendars, vice versa. And a week before the meetings, I send them an agenda with an outline of how much time I anticipate this conversation to be. One, that helps to get them framed. Even if they look at it a minute before we meet, they still have opportunity to prepare for the conversation rather than coming off the cuff. And that's important because if this really is a mentoring relationship and it's a mutual mentoring, so yes, they may be pouring in, but the experiences that I've had both with mentees and mentors is they gain something from it as well. And so that preparation is important because everyone has time limits, priorities. We have competing priorities. But if this is important, you'll invest the time to make sure that you get what you need, the outcomes you desire from it.
Mm, mm.
And it can't be just because, oh, that's my mentor, just to be able to throw some person's name around, because that's not helpful at all. I mean, that'll give you a little flex, but not much, really.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've experienced this, but sometimes the best relationships or the best mentors or the best cheerleaders or PR, undercover PR persons have been people that you've been walking with for so long, and folk don't know you've been walking with them. And yet they teach you so much if you're willing to learn. Um, I want to give a little shout out to Dr. Jackie King. Dr. Jackie King has been,
Oh my God, yes.
yeah. Dr. Jackie King resources so many different women that I know, and other clergy, not just women. And yet, oftentimes people don't know how much she actually pours in and invests to try to make sure that people have the resources, just to get to their next level. And she doesn't ask for a thank you. She's not looking for any of that. She just wants to see you do your best. And I think that is something that I hope to, and I think you as well aspire to do in terms of just, God, help us to be a blessing.
Mhm.
However you would have us to serve, help us to be a blessing to someone else. I always think back to uh, when I first started in ministry, I prayed for a female mentor. I had prayed. I said, God, please send me a female mentor, please, because
Wow.
all of my pastoral mentors at the time were men, which was very odd because I actually had three female pastors growing up. So this idea of not having women can't be pastors just was never something I even wrestled with. But once I finally started my ministry, I was like, God, please send me somebody. And so I probably went without someone for about almost a year, probably. And then I ended up getting, one United Methodist and one non-denominational female pastor to kind of guide me. And it was really interesting because this is something I also tell people when you're thinking about mentors. Think about people that are where you want to go. Like link up with someone that's where you want to go versus where you are now. And I think that's super important. But the biggest lesson I learned, what you were saying, is this intentionality around don't get frustrated if they're not the ones calling you. You have to be willing to get on their schedule, get on their timetable, and be persistent in connecting. Not to say that they don't love you, not to say that they don't want to support you, but I think oftentimes if we don't hear back in like the time frame that we want to hear back, then all of a sudden we're just done with the relationship, versus just letting it breathe a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so, can you speak to a little bit of just the kind of the cyclical nature of support that you might receive at times? Because oftentimes the people that are with us in one season may not be with us in the next season. And the openness that we need sometimes to reevaluate the team.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I think about those that have been integral in my life, impactful in my life, and some of them are not around my table. And I use that as, the table that offers truth, the table that prays, the table, and that table evolves because people's lives evolve or the need evolves. And it's just honest about that. Um, I think about being able to know individually because you could reach out to all these people and all these people are willing to serve. But if you don't know what the outcomes are that you're desiring, you're wasting people's time and yours. And I
Mm,
feel that there is just a scatteredness. So has one taken the time to truly center themselves in this is where there are gaps and opportunities for me, and I see them living and operating in this capacity, and I feel that I could learn from, glean from, and grow from this type of connection. And so that's an evaluate for me, that is a yearly evaluation where I'm like, okay, who do I need around my table? Not my community of care, that's different.
yeah, yeah,
Who do
yeah,
I need around my table for where I'm trying to grow into? And it's not positionally or title wise, it's
yeah.
more of I need to become more self aware. I need to become more emotionally intelligent. I need to become more direct in my or affirming in or whatever that is. It takes the time for reflection so that one is able to identify what it is you need. And when you're asking for that need to be met, you can be more direct and concise versus, I just want to hang out with you. That may be cool. However, just the people that I know, hanging out is not something that you just, you
Yeah.
have your people to hang out with. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I want to dig a little deeper structurally. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of having a strategic plan? Because as you were talking, that's what you were saying. You're in everything that you've discussed today, it was having a, you didn't use the word plan, but you were really telling us we need to have a plan in our relationships. We need to have a plan in our in how we are um thinking about communication, how we're thinking about our mentor relationships, how we're thinking about our coaching relationships. What I think getting to the crux of what do we need? What do we want? And so can you just talk about the importance of taking time to plan? Because oftentimes, that's we're here, there, and everywhere. But this idea of the intentionality around making a goal, making a time frame. Can you just talk a little bit about the importance of that?
right. So I can just share from my experience. So twice a year, I have a biannual appointment with myself, where for me, I travel to sun, sand, and blue water,
Okay.
and no one but me and God. For where the first few days is just sleep and rest, The next few days is being open to where God and God's Spirit is speaking and leading. And then the next few days is really documenting what that is. And so when I leave that biennial appointment with myself, biannual, not biennial,
Yeah.
biannual appointment with myself, is I have a playbook for how I will operate the next 6 months. And I'm looking at that, being able to say, okay, you're not progressing in this area. So what do you need? Do you need a mentor? Do you need a coach? Do you need a consultant or whatever? And
Mhm.
so operating from that playbook. So then when I get to, and my rhythm is July and December. So then when I get to December, I'm looking back on growth, seeing where there's still opportunity, creating a new playbook for what the next 6 months will be. And so those are the rhythms that I do. Additionally, 4 times a year, I take a silent retreat. And so for one day, for 24 hours, I'm disconnected from all things just so that I can reconnect with God.
Mm.
And it's these types of intentional rhythms that I've incorporated into my life, as well as every Friday is my Sabbath. And no is a complete sentence on Fridays. It just is.
Okay. Yeah.
And when I go into any setting, appointment setting, I already set these. I have my biannual appointment with myself, July, December, 4 times a year. I take a silent retreat for 24 hours. And then every Friday is uncompromised, unless it's dire, but I get to determine what's dire and not. So yeah, those are the rhythms, but it's purposeful. And I think that is one of the things that I have learned over the years, is to be purposeful with my time. Um, because we can waste a lot of time. We can. And then we look back, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Mm-mm. I don't have any regrets. None.
Mm. Can you talk a little bit around setting expectations in your appointment setting? Because one of the things you just said is, hey, when I go into a new place, I let them know what my rhythms are. I let them know that my Sabbath is every Friday. I let them know about my silent retreat time. I let them, my appointments with myself, and probably I would assume probably like your covenant meetings maybe probably would be included in those conversations as well. So how do we as pastors begin to have that conversations around expectations, particularly for those who are starting a new appointment, because we're now at the time of this recording, we're now in August, the very beginning of August, still a great time for setting boundaries and expectations for a new appointment season. So would you mind just talking a little bit about setting expectations in your appointment settings?
I think being able to open the lines of communication related to those expectations, and it's shared expectations. It's not me coming dictating. It's for me to be my best self as leader. These are the things that I need, and
Mhm.
putting it on the table.
Yeah.
Documenting it just beyond the words, you put it on paper and people sign it. Just so
Mhm.
that there's no question what I said and what I did not say. And I feel that everyone, honest to goodness, have that opportunity. Um, in the capacity that I currently serve as superintendent, when I am introducing a pastor into a new context of ministry, I offer them the opportunity to set what those expectations are, so that the staff parish relations committee hears it, and then we also document it so there is never a question. Of course, they may be renegotiated as you go along and you grow in relationship with one another. There may need to be some compromises, but opening the lines of communication. And we cannot make assumptions that people should know that. Well, they don't. So how do you educate and inform? And I think some of the barriers to communication is because we make too many assumptions, both from the
Mm.
congregational aspect and from the clergy aspect. Well, my former church, they knew, well, you were in relationship with them, so of course they knew. Our last pastor didn't, well, this one does. And so
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so again, you're starting a fresh start. What was, but what is right now is what will be. And the will be is how you work together in communicating the expectations, holding one another accountable to it, and then growing into it. But without it, and you keep making these assumptions, everyone's going to be upset. Everyone's going to be frustrated because one is not being felt, seen, heard, but because you haven't communicated, you can't make that expectation either. So have the conversation and document it.
Yeah, and I think that's key what she said. She said document it. And I think this is a continual conversation that needs to happen, once a year, particularly during your evaluations times, is that we need to be talking about what are the expectations? Have we met our previous year goals? Kind of, again, just this constant idea of assessment. And I think sometimes we're not willing to do the assessment part because we're so afraid about hearing what we're doing wrong or areas of growth when it's really areas of opportunity. So thank you so much for talking about that.
I have a funny story. So, as superintendent, I get the opportunity to do a staff parish relations training on a yearly basis. And so, when I talk about the importance of Sabbath, when I talk about the importance of continuing education, like I put that into and integrate that as seeds that breeds the conversations in the local context of ministry. So then I shared with the staff parish chairs across and pastors just my rhythm, similarly to what I said. So a few months ago, a staff parish chair from one of the churches, she saw me. She said, "How is your Fridays going?"
Oh,
I said, "Look
wow.
at you." Yes.
Wow. Yes.
People want to hold you accountable in a healthy way when you have set and stated your expectations. And I just hugged her because I said, "Thank you." Because I needed that reminder, one, that you heard me, but two, that you hold equally as important as I do. And you want to make sure that I am operating for my best self.
Yes.
And this is just not a just, but a staff parish chair that I don't have interactions with on a daily basis. They do not serve on any of my committees, boards, or anything, but yet they heard me.
Yeah.
And they also hold that pastor accountable to these same practices and making sure that they're doing what is needed and necessary. So people want to hold, I mean, people want to help and want to be that cheerleader. We just give them opportunity, but we have to communicate it and can't make assumptions.
Mm. Mm. Well, I have two more questions for our time. So I'm gonna shift gears for a little bit. So we talked a little bit of our beginning of our conversation was about just the excitement of Black clergy women and the second line. And so one of the things I ask of you, what's your hope for Black clergy women moving forward? What's a hope that you have?
Mhm. I feel that this is a season within the United Methodist Church specifically, but I feel in God's kingdom more generally that we have opportunities to lead. Um, my hope is that we are equipped and that we are encouraged to lean into these leadership opportunities. Equipped in a way to where there may be things that one needs to reach out to make sure that they have the skill, the gifts, and the tools so that they are able to lead. So between, but like you and I went to further our education to receive our doctorate of ministry. That's a tool. It's not necessary, but it's a tool. And it was life-giving for me. It was hard, but it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
life-giving.
exactly. Yeah, same. Same.
Um, and there are so many certifications and certificates that are online and in person. Like for me right now, I'm in a scholar program through Northwestern University, executive nonprofit leadership scholar. And so that is only enriching my toolkit for whatever may be next. And so when people say, "Oh, well, how did you?" Well, I'm not looking for opportunities. I'm preparing myself for the opportunities. So there may be certificates, there may be certifications, there may be doctors of ministry or some type of advanced educational endeavors that need to take place for one to enhance their toolbox so that they are prepared for leadership in whatever season is next. So this didn't come about just me sitting on my hands, trust. No one. You begin equipping yourself for whatever it may be. Even if nothing comes about, what I often share with people and even encourage myself, if they don't, I will, meaning I'll create something for myself. And there are so many opportunities in many communities that are looking and seeking and searching for something that we have the opportunity to lead, whatever it may be.
So can you talk a little bit around what does it mean to be an entrepreneur and a pastor? Because I think that's also a new wave as we're talking about just preparing ourselves for what next looks like.
So I'm editing in my head.
Or I'll say have an entrepreneurial spirit.
That part.
There we go. Have an entrepreneurial spirit. Yes, there we go.
I feel that God has gifted all of us with many things that meets the needs of the world, period. And I feel that there are opportunities within the context of ministry for which we have been assigned and or appointed, and looking outside of that scope to see where we can lend our skills, gifts, and abilities for the good of the world. So to only limit ourselves to the appointment is limiting, and it's not the system. I feel that there are ways in which we can communicate that while your heart and your priority is to the context of ministry for which you have been assigned or appointed, and being able to say, I have greater passions to see the eradication of or the inequities of blah, 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 dismantled, being able to communicate that. And I intend to allocate X number of hours, which is part of my ministry that only enhances our ministry together,
Yeah.
so that there can be tapping into that entrepreneurial spirit. It goes back to communication.
Yeah.
You can't make assumptions. And I don't support sneaking around and doing it. Just be honest. Like, there is an unmet need that is not being held here that I feel that I can meet it somewhere else. So for me, one of my passions is teaching. In my capacity in serving right now, I don't get the opportunity to teach as much as I would like. So I teach course of study for 2 different extension schools, and I love it. And I come alive. And people are like, oh my God, how do you have time? The thing is, the things that give me life, the things that makes my heart sing, I make time for on my calendar because it's life-giving.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And my final question is, what hope do you have or what excitement do you have for your new position?
I am simply grateful for the opportunity, for the confidence of the Council of Bishops to offer my name, and for the affirmation of the General Conference, and working in and with both the Council and the Commission on General Conference for what will be. I mean, this is a pivotal time in the life of the United Methodist Church. We have lots of things going on regarding our evolution and reestablishment of who we will become. And to be a part of that is exciting. To know that we will have an event of General Conference in 28 that will look vastly different than what we have experienced formerly, and to being a part of that along with the team and organizing that is exciting. And so my hope is that there is still this openness, that there is still the love train that we experienced at this General Conference, where people all over the world is getting together and dancing and being silly, but purposeful, and understanding that with the vastness of diversity, we become a great impact across the world, and to live into the grace in which we teach.
Mm. Well, thank you, Dr. Fulbright, for this wonderful conversation. And this is Howling for Change. May God bless and keep you. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for this platform. May you continue to be encouraged in all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.